Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our program. I'm Helen Wilson, Vice President of the Squirrel Historical Society. My co-vice president is Alex Musicant, who is also one of our media specialists. And in the back is our other media specialist, who is also our recording secretary. And our president, Jim Hammond, couldn't be here tonight. Hopefully he'll be here next month. And I'm going to introduce the rest of our board members. We have Rod Parmigiani, our treasurer, back there. And let's see. Toby Chapman, Todd Miller are our program coordinators. Our membership coordinator is Stanley Klein. I think he's here tonight. Email coordinator and president of the Neil Log House is Tony Indivina. Other board members are Todd Wilson. Evelyn Young is not here, and Charles Suckup is not here. I was trying to get my cheat sheet. Let's see. Okay, who did I forget? Let's see. I think that's it. Okay. So I have a few announcements before we start. Because of the NFL draft, we have a special announcement about the Neil Log House. And after I'm done, Penny, as soon as I'm finished, then you'll say a few words about the Neil Log House. Second announcement is, this is very special art exhibition at the Boast building, which is because the Boast Rivers of Steel is speaking tonight, this is a great lead into your talk. But one of our members, Carolyn Boyce, moved into, just by chance, she calls it happenstance, bought the Henry Kerner house and fell in love with the artist, the house that's on Negley Avenue, the one with the little putti on the patio, the angels. Henry Kerner, and Alex, you reminded me that this was Holocaust Remembrance Day. Henry Kerner was a Holocaust survivor, came to Pittsburgh, and lived on first Murray Hill Avenue and then Negley Avenue. And he is a world-renowned artist. So the art exhibition that Carolyn Boyce curated is at the Both Buildings. That's a tongue twister. So the Both Building. The opening is April 24th from 6 to 8, and the exhibit runs from then till July 31st. And I do have flyers over there on the information table in case you can take one home, put it on your refrigerator. It's a must-see exhibition of Henry Kerner's works. So please take one of the announcements. Second announcement is, it's about Serpentine Drive. It's almost done with the repairs. The city still wants it to be bike and ped only, but we work at the Neil Log House. We see how many people do not use that road for walking and bicyclists. They wouldn't use it at night. They don't use it during wet weather, during ice and snow. But cars can. And that road was designed by Bigelow and Burke and Falconer at the very beginning of the park to be a beautiful driving road. And it keeps traffic in the park so you don't have to go out of the park on these dangerous detours. So we were trying to figure out how to let the city know we would like a hearing. So we have to submit a petition to have the hearing, and the petition is over there. the catch is that you sort of have to agree that you agree to attend the hearing when it's scheduled. It can't be scheduled until the petition is done, but you can view it online. We've attended hearings, and you can put it on, kind of do your thing, and when the part that relates to you, in this case Serpentine, comes on, then you pay attention. But you can also submit letters of support, and we'll let you know if there's any other way. But we just think that this road, this wide, beautiful, fun-to-drive road, needs to be reopened to cars. So consider signing our petition. And is that Carolyn?
Yes, it is.
There she is. So she is the curator. I just announced the Henry Kerner exhibition, Painting Pittsburgh, the Art of Henry Kerner. And she brought a poster for us. So, and the other flyer on our information table is from the Rivers of Steel. So pick one up. Pick one of those up as well. And now here's Paine to tell you about the Neil Log House event.
Okay, this will be real quick. Those of you who got the newsletter who saw a little blurb about the preseason openings that we're having. The season starts in May, and from May through September, we have the park ranger who staffs the place 3 days a week. There are a couple of preseason openings. 2 of them, we have a private event this Thursday, actually. But next week for the NFL draft, we're going to be open 2 days, 2 hours each of those days. We weren't sure how many people would really be interested, but then we saw the write-up that Visit Pittsburgh did for us, and we could get swamped, okay? So I'm bringing this up because we have our staffing in place. We have actually a core of docents, myself, Helen, Alex, and Betty is here. We actually have 6 or 7 people through the season to back up the ranger. A lot of those are going to help with those 2 days. We're actually short 1 person for next Saturday. It would be ideal if we got real busy, if we had 1 person who doesn't really have to be fully trained to do anything except, if they want to just come as they are, put their frontier gear on. We have a history table, and anybody who's interested in getting involved, either for a one-time come to help us, or if you'd like to get involved more and maybe fill in during the summer, come and see me after the meeting, okay? Or send a contact us on the email, and I'll work with you on that. Thank you very much. Todd Miller, program coordinator.
Thank you, Tony, and our co-coordinator, along with Toby Chapman. It's really a team effort. But, good evening, everyone, and glad that you're here with us this evening. I think it's fair to say that few organizations have done as much as Rivers of Steel to preserve and reinterpret our region's industrial story. And tonight's program is titled Rivers of Steel, Past, Present, and Future. We're pleased to welcome Mary Murrin, the Executive Director of the organization, and Ron Baraff, the Vice President of Historic Resources and Facilities, and Dr. Kirsten Paine, the Museum Educator and Historic Interpretation Manager for the organization, which is based in Homestead, as many of you know, in the Boast Building, and brings to light the artistry and innovation of Southwestern Pennsylvania's industrial and cultural heritage through both historic sites and contemporary programs. So at this time, it's my pleasure to welcome our speakers for this evening, Mary Murrin, Ron Baraff, and Kirsten Paine.
You all hear me? It's so wonderful to look out at this crowd. I have all kinds of connections. Ray, the family I used to babysit for when I was growing up. Eve, my bestie from Risings tonight. Caroline. Lots of welcome faces. Mary Murrin, I was raised in the East End. I went to East Park Place School on Braddock Avenue, and then went to Rosenstein for a year, and then graduated from Alderdice. I went away to college in Rhode Island and came back. Didn't really expect to, but I came back. And my career really followed, like I'm sure most of us in this room, the ups and downs of the economy. Started with Westinghouse, then was an at-home mom for 5 years when I was going back to work. I contracted with Westinghouse, and then they divested of everything. And I read an article in the Wall Street Journal about something out of Carnegie Mellon called a startup. And I applied and got a job, and I worked for 25 years with startups out of CMU. And then Chevron came to town, and natural gas boom, and I was head of our social investment, so investing in the rural areas that we were disrupting. And then I got transferred to Houston because Chevron was leaving Pittsburgh and sold everything to EQT. So I've been in Houston I was there for about 7 years, and a year ago, I was ready to come home, but the job at Rivers and Steel was posted, and within 15 minutes, 2 friends texted me and said, "This is the job for you." And I thought, well, I've never worked for a nonprofit. I don't think they're going to give me a second look, but I want this job. So I leaned in hard, and it is the best job I've ever had. In my 3rd act, it's wonderful. It's a pleasure working with these folks. So we've got an intriguing program to share, but a couple things I wanted to start out with. In my first couple months on the job, I took every tour of the Carrie furnaces that I could take to learn new perspectives, hear different tour guides, what their history and their connection was to the Carrie furnaces. And 2 things stood out for me. The first one was somebody referred to Pittsburgh as the Silicon Valley of the United States in the early 1900s. And I never thought about it that way. I always, having been raised here, I always thought of manufacturing and industrial stuff as important and gritty and hard. I never thought of it as innovation or Silicon Valley like today, but it was. It was the technology that built the world. And part of what we're doing at Carrie Furnaces is to recognize that and figure out ways that we can continue to carry that forward, that mindset forward to the next generation. We'll talk a little bit about that. And the second thing that was fascinating to me, there was a woman from out of town who had been, her grandparents had lived in Rankin, and her grandfather worked in the mills. And she was telling me that her grandfather wanted Carrie Furnaces to be torn down. And in my mind, I thought it was the big developers coming in to tear everything down and sell the land and flip things. And she said, no, her grandfather didn't want to look over that hill at that skeleton of a building that had employed her family for generations, and given them the dignity of work, and he wanted it torn down. And then she said, early 2000s, he started to rethink it, and he saw the value in telling the stories behind it. So both of those things inspire me to work at Rivers of Steel every day. So today we are going to start with, who was Carrie? And why do you name a gritty mill after a woman?
So let me skip ahead here. I'm going to go toward, yes, the spoiler alert. Many spoilers. There we go. So this is a really interesting story because in many ways this is both the culmination of decades of searching and also the very beginning of a brand new story that we get to tell, not only about our site, but about the history of Pittsburgh, the rise of new industrialists, families, the way that families moved in Gilded Age America, but ultimately, to just bring it back to Squirrel Hill, that it has a very real connection to Squirrel Hill too. And this story starts with this newspaper article, which you can see on the screen. And that newspaper article was an accident. Ron, you were looking for something else.
We were researching the early days of the Carrie Furnace Company, trying to kind of place things together, who were the principals, how they were moving things, and how the company was formed. And voila.
And he wasn't looking for this, even though he had been looking for this answer to a question for a very long time. Because it is one of the most frequently asked questions that any tour guide will get at Carrie. Well, who is Carrie? Why do you call this place Carrie? And we never could really give a definitive answer to this question. We could give an approximation of an answer. We could give our best guess based on historical precedent. And precedent said that many of the blast furnaces in Pittsburgh were named after women, specifically the wives and the daughters of the factory owners. So of course you have places like Dorothy, Jane, Eliza, Beatrice, Bernice, Isabella, and it continues. And then, oh, Lucy, how could I forget Lucy?
And Edith.
And Edith. But all of these names we're able to track because it goes right back to either a wife or a daughter of one of the owners, or perhaps somebody who's really high up in management, like a superintendent or a general manager or a president or something like that. But we couldn't find that connection to Carrie, because when Carrie was founded in 1884, the primary stakeholders were two brothers, H.C. and W.C. Phones. Now, they were not married at the time, so they're that close. They didn't have any children at the time, so it's not a daughter either. For a while, we were going with the idea that perhaps she was a sister who had died long before, and that she had just disappeared from the historical record, which wouldn't necessarily be unusual. We knew that it wasn't their mother, because their mother's name was Sarah. So we were just operating with assumption until Juan found this very tiny article that I've read it and talked about it so many times at this point, that the article says, "The new furnaces in Rankin Station were blown in the other day. Miss Carrie Clark, the daughter of William Clark, general manager and president of the Carrie Furnace Company, lit the first fires and performed other baptismal services." And we got an email with this article attached. I believe the email subject was, "Bam, ... here's our Carrie." And off we went. So I am part of the archives department, which all you really need to know about us is that if you give us this little bit to go on, we are going to go down a rabbit hole, and we are going to stay there for a very long time until we have come up with everything that we need to come up with to answer this question. So we started to try to track down this figure of Carrie Clark. We had a little bit of difficulty because, of course, the Clark family is, in Pittsburgh, we think about the Clarks as the Clark Bar. No, that's a completely different family. We had to hone in on this other industrialist family. And as it turns out, William Clark was, he was about as high up as you could get in the iron and steel industry in Pittsburgh without being named Andrew Carnegie or Henry Clay Frick. He was as close as you could get to that. He was an English immigrant who came to the United States when he was a child. He spent some time in Pittsburgh before going to Youngstown, Ohio. Got married in Youngstown. They started having children in Youngstown, which is where Carrie was born in 1863. Now, by 1869, the Clark family had moved from Youngstown, which, keep in mind, Youngstown is very much an iron and steel city the same way that Pittsburgh is, right? So they moved back to Pittsburgh to start a new company, which we now know is the Solar Iron Works. You might also see it as the William Clark and Sons company, but the Solar Iron Works was over in Lawrenceville. Now, William Clark started that company with his brother-in-law, Charles Phones. And then, once you get into the late 1870s, as Pittsburgh is starting to move from iron production to steel production, there's a brand new steel mill being built over in a place called Homestead. That brings William Clark over to Homestead, to the company that was known at that point as the Pittsburgh Bessemer Company. So that takes Clark from Lawrenceville right over to Homestead, which is directly across from what would eventually become Carrie. So what is Carrie herself doing when her father is doing all of this? Well, Carrie grows up as an extremely well-educated young woman. She is the eldest daughter. She is child number 3 out of eventually 8. And by the late 1870s, just as William Clark is going over to Homestead, the family sends Carrie to Vassar College. So they send her to get an extremely expensive, very elite higher education. Now, in the 1870s, Vassar is making waves in the United States as a rather revolutionary school for young women. It was part of the Seven Sisters, which means that for every Ivy League school, there was, or the intention was to establish a women's school that provided an equal curriculum to that curriculum that men were being given. So in Vassar's case, its partner school was Yale. So of course, they're not coming into Yale in the 1870s. Why would they do that? So they sent Carrie to Vassar. What's really interesting about this is that when I'm talking about an equal education, I mean she is being given courses in languages, so Latin, French, German, literatures, mathematics, algebra, trigonometry, geometry, geography, geology, biology, chemistry, basic engineering. She would have been given education in religions, art history. It is a classic liberal arts education of the same caliber as her compatriots at Yale. That's unusual because that signals to us that the Clark family was thinking about Carrie in a much bigger capacity than just being brought back to Pittsburgh to be somebody's wife. She was being educated for a reason. She comes back to Pittsburgh in 1881. And by the time the Carrie furnaces open in 1884, which I'm going to steal your line, that is the best 21st birthday present I think anybody could be given. From what we can tell, wherever William Clark was, Carrie was kind of nearby. From what we can tell, that Carrie was being trained to be the public face of the Clark family. She was being trained to assume public speaking roles. She was being trained to go out into the public and be their spokesperson, which is really interesting. If you think about, well, who in Pittsburgh society was like her? Her equivalent in Pittsburgh society would have been Adelaide Frick, because Adelaide Frick is only 4 years older than she is. So they are contemporaries, and so you can think about Carrie Clark in that same vein. This is who she was supposed to become. But what's interesting is that after Carrie furnaces open in 1884, William Clark dies 6 months into the run of the furnaces. He's brought over there as the first person to run the company. He's kind of the perfect person to run the company. But he's dead within 6 months. And so the Clark family starts to recede from the day-to-day running of the Carrie furnaces. So by 1886, Carrie has married a man named Bartlett Arkell. Bartlett Arkell is the second son of a New York State senator. He is Yale educated. He is an entrepreneur himself. He is, on paper, the perfect match, the perfect society match for somebody like Carrie. Second son of a New York State senator with political aspirations, marries eldest daughter of wealthy Pittsburgh industrialists. The headlines kind of speak right for themselves, or they would if we could find those headlines. What's fascinating about this is that what should have been the social event of the season in Pittsburgh barely registers a blip in the newspapers. There are a few mentions of a marriage license being issued. There are a couple of very small articles that describe a very small wedding held in the Clark's home. So, right after this, Carrie moves to a tiny town in the Mohawk River Valley called Canajoharie, New York. Bartlett Arkell he's on his way to starting a company. The Arkell family got very rich by inventing the paper bag.
You never thought that somebody invented that thing?
So, by 1887, they have one son, William Clark Arkell. By 1888, Carrie is dead. She's 25 years old. She dies in Canajoharie. We have no idea what actually happened to her. We actually got her death certificate from the state of New York, and they returned our fee because there's no cause of death listed. We don't know what happened to her. We know that it was sudden, and we know that the family did not expect it. But instead of being buried in Canajoharie, Carrie's mother, Jane Clark, pays for her body to be brought back to Pittsburgh, where she is now interred in the Homewood Cemetery, in the Clark family mausoleum, which is section 14, lot 111, if you're looking for it. They're right next to the Mellons. But she's right there. And if you go up the steps and look into the mausoleum, it's one where the doors are kind of partially open, and you look right off to the left, you'll see Caroline Clark, wife of Bartlett Arkell, March 1863 to November of 1888. So she's not buried as an Arkell, she's buried as a Clark. And her mother paid to have her brought back here because this is where she wanted her to be. So for all this time, Carrie has been 4 miles away from the Carrie furnaces, and she is just over that way, I think.
And she's a beautiful little name for her. Before I give it to Rhonda, thank you, Kirsten. The other cool part of that story is the Phones brothers that Kirsten mentioned, who owned the Carrie furnaces originally, sold it to Carnegie, Illinois.
Carnegie.
And the Phones brothers were engineers. They liked to golf, and they thought golf was way too easy. So they took the money from the sale and they bought a whole bunch of land out in Oakmont and built the hardest golf course. So who would have thought the Carrie furnaces had a direct connection to Oakmont golf?
Well, the Phones brothers are actually far more famous for golf. I mean, I forget which one is HC, I think, and his son in the Golf Hall of Fame.
We can't hear you.
There we go. Is that better?
Okay, before I hand it off to Ron, I just want to say one quick thing. So Carrie Furnaces is one of our properties. We have 3 others. The Boast Building that we mentioned where the Kerner exhibit is our headquarters. That is a building built in 1861 hotel / casino / brothel / boarding house at the Pay Gate. But it's where the Union was hunkered down when frickin' Carnegie brought in the steelbreakers. So that's why that's an historic landmark. Then we have the Pump House, which is that circular red brick building at the waterfront at the trail. That was where the first shots were fired in the Battle of Homestead. And then our 4th asset is called the W.A. Young and Sons Forge in Rice's Landing in Greene County, which does not have anything to do with the Battle of Homestead, but it was a place where steamboats and railroad, the foundation of those industries were built. Ron's going to
Actually, if you want to keep it on there.
Yeah, he's going to do a deep dive into our.
So W.A. Young and Sons Machine Shop and Foundry, which opens in 1900 and operates until 1966, is one of the most remarkable landmarks in this region that many people don't know about. How many people have been to Rice's Landing? Okay, well, that's better than what we usually do. If you've been to Rice's Landing, you understand it's on the way to absolutely nowhere. I mean, you have to purposely be going there. But this little shop is a remarkable time capsule to, not just the ingenuity that was taking place here, but what was happening in these small towns and how they were supporting the steamboat industry, the coal mining industry, railroads, well, just their own little hometown. And it operates as a machine shop, family run, throughout, 2/3 of the 20th century, and is perfectly preserved. Overhead line shaft, belt-driven machinery that the Smithsonian deemed it one of the most remarkable sites in America for a small family operation. This Saturday, so here's shameless plug number one, okay? This Saturday from 9 until 3, okay, is the 45th annual Hammer-In. If you want to take that lovely drive, it's about 43 miles or so along the river. It's actually a very beautiful drive. Come on down and watch this site in action. You'll get to see blacksmiths from all over the tri-state region come and do demonstrations. You'll take a tour of the building, machinery, all runs. We have, over the course of the past 12 years or so, put about $1 million into this site to restore it. And most of it came from the state of Pennsylvania, PHMC, Keystone Grants, etc., Allegheny Foundation, a few others. It's a remarkable site. So come on down, see it in action. It really is stepping back in time. It's one of my favorite things that we do every year. You get to see lots of guys in suspenders pounding on steel. It's a lot of fun. There we go. All right, how many folks have been to the Carrie furnaces? Okay, okay. Very good. Very good. And you all took a tour there as part of the group, or did you go? Perfect. So growing up in this area, I too am a Squirrel Hill kid. I grew up on Fernwald and then Phillips, and I spent most of my childhood running around in Frick Park and following 9 Mile Run and running along the train tracks and picking up taconite and doing things that kids are going to do with taconite, all in the shadow of these mills. They were the background of my childhood. They were everywhere, for those of you that grew up here. So from 1884 when Carrie opens and connected to Homestead in 1898, massive complex, absolutely massive complex. But by the 1980s, all of this was shutting down. And it really became obvious to folks in this region and Homestead and people around this region that we need to do something. We need to save this. We need to tell this story. This is the story not just of Pittsburgh, not just of Pennsylvania, but of growth of this country and the impact it had on the world. The iron that came out of Carrie became the steel and Homestead that built, the Panama Canal locks, the Empire State Building, USS Missouri, USS Oregon. This is a huge, huge story. So our organization actually starts in 1988 when the Homestead Works, that you're talking 4 miles of riverfront property, is sold to a scrap, to the Park Corporation. Their goal is to tear it all down and remediate the site and get it ready for some level of redevelopment. And the cry was like, look, if you tear it all down and you take it all away, you take away our ability as a region to tell this story, to use our history to help drive revitalization within these communities. Homestead itself, the Homestead Works itself sat in 6 different boroughs that were all greatly affected by the closure of the mill. This is an opportunity to keep this memory alive, to bring people to Pittsburgh, to have this be what it should be, a world-class destination. In the early years, folks were really a lot like, the steel worker you talked about, where if I can't work there, I don't want to see it. Pittsburgh was running away from the steel area. They're saying, you know, we're not a smoky city anymore, we're something new, we're reinventing ourselves. However, over time, people started to realize that this is a remarkably huge story, and one that can help really revitalize these communities by bringing people in. Tourism does that. We get, you know, tens of thousands of people a year that are coming to our sites now. And when they're doing that, they're not just learning about the history that took place there, but they're learning about the communities in which they exist. They're going into Rankin and Swissvale and Homestead and Price's Landing and spending money and discovering these places and discovering the stories that come with them, the stories of Carrie Clark, the stories of John Huey, and an early African-American leader in labor organizing in this region. So these are huge, huge stories that need to be told, need to be preserved, and are resonating with people all over the world. You know, Carrie, we're about to kick off our public tour season, beginning of May. Public tours run through the end of October and are generally 5 days a week. So I welcome you to come back. If you've been there before, come on back, you'll get a different tour. We don't script our tours. We don't, you know, we have a tour guide right over there, Julie. We don't hand them a book and say memorize it. We want everybody to tell their own story. Get your facts right, you know how iron is made, how steel is made. But everybody has a different connection and a different approach to telling that story. So no two tours are alike. Now we can say we do that because I don't want to memorize a script, but the reality is everybody brings something special to it, brings people back. So this season coming up at Tori, again, Carrie, more shameless promotion. We will be hosting Quantum Theater. They will be doing The Tempest in July and August. We will also be hosting, as we do every year in June, Beers of the Berg. So if you like to try all the different breweries in this region, come on out. There'll be the Irish Festival in September, and then in October 3rd, I believe, is our signature event, which is the Festival of Combustion, this is our 10th anniversary, and it is a celebration of, hot art. So you get to see people casting iron, casting aluminum, doing blacksmithing demonstrations, ceramics, glass making, really interactive, a lot of fun. Invite everybody else to come out. It's great.
So, wanted to tell you a little bit what other work we're doing to move the heritage of innovation, grit, and hard work forward. So in addition to tours and the historical perspective, we actually launched this year the first workforce development and traditional trades program. So we have 4 trainees in carpentry, masonry, welding, and what's the fourth? I forget the fourth. But they had an amazing time. You can learn some of those skills at a trade center, or trade school, which is important. But what they get to do at Carrie Furnaces is learn it on the site 4 days a week. It's an earn to learn, so we pay them. Instead of them paying for learning these skills, we're paying them, and they're fixing things for us. They get to learn it over here, then walk over there and try to fix something, come back, figure out what they did wrong, learn it, do it again. They all got jobs. They're graduating next week, and we plan to double the program next year with eight traditional trades folks. We also have an environmental science class for K-12 students who come in and take water in test tubes out of the river, put them on slides, and look at the living things in them. And we've got an incredible set of teachers who talk to them about how 20 years ago there would be nothing living in that water. But there's a responsibility to the future of our land to take good care of it and do things better than we have before. So just a couple things I do want to leave this open for questions, but Now is a really exciting time in the Mon Valley. So again, I've only been in the role for a year, but boy, I got here at the right time because so much is going on. First of all, the Nippon U.S. Steel merger acquisition is pretty remarkable. Nippon has actually committed $2.4 billion to modernize Edgar Thomson Works in Braddock. And Ron has been begging U.S. Steel for years to give us some equipment that's outdated and is just sitting in the fields at Edgar Thomson. We get a call a couple weeks ago. They'd like us to come over and look at it. They'll give it to us, they'll bring it over because Nippon Steel is giving them this time and money and space to renovate it. Now they gotta get rid of this stuff. So we're gonna be benefiting from some of that. The other really exciting thing is that County Executive Sarah Innamorato announced Mon Valley Forward Initiative. And it's really a recognition. The details we're still working through, or they are, as a county we are, but you know, the incredible things that have happened in the city pretty much ended at Hazelwood Green development, you know, up the river. And Rankin and Smithsville, you know, Munhall Homestead, Turtle Creek have been left behind. So there's a lot of emphasis on how we move that, the good things that have happened in the city up the river. And we are really envisioning Carrie Furnace as the gateway to the Mon Valley. So we are in a quiet phase of a campaign that will include revitalization, preservation of the facility, riverfront and trail access. Right now you have to weave your way down on a car, but we'll make it more accessible. A new building, we'll be putting in a new building as well. And it won't happen tomorrow. We've got a phased approach through 2031, but it's pretty remarkable. Also, every ticket sold on site for an event, whether it's one we sponsor or the Irish Festival, a percentage of that goes to Swissvale. So right now we've got 20,000 people coming in a year. When we raise that to 200,000, Swissvale will benefit from the tax piece of that. So it's pretty exciting times. I forgot to mention that Mike McCarthy, the new Steeler coach, is also from the Mon Valley, so I think there's going to be a lot of attention there as well. So also, somebody mentioned here that they lived on Beecher Boulevard looking over the Mon. Starting on Friday, thanks to some good work that Ron has done, the Carrie furnaces will be lit every night from sundown till 10:30.
I'm going after this.
Okay,
I want to see them.
oh, you're gonna go see them. Yeah, so that's a wonderful experience to be able to say something's happening here. Things have been happening there for 20 years, but you really can't tell. So we think this is a great opportunity for flyovers, drones with you know, the draft, PA 250, Steeler games. It's coming alive and it's an exciting time. So watch for that. We actually timed it with the opening of Kennywood so that the people that enter Kennywood can see it from the bridges. And I'd like to call out Clear Story Design, which is Rob Long has developed it for us, and it's pretty exciting. So anything else you guys want to add before we? Okay.
Just, you know, because Carolyn's here, I know we talked about it earlier, but opening on the 24th of April and running through July 31st will be the Henry Kerner, which we're all very excited for.
Please come to opening night and have a little reception.
Any questions?
Can you go back a slide? Where exactly is that training center geographically? Yeah, where is that?
It's in the AC. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So right now, this is a future vision.
Okay, it's a rendering.
This is what it's going to look like when it's done, but there's really
It's not happening. So right now, the building with the USS sign on it, they work out of there. And then they work out of the other building that has our logo on the front. So it's out of the AC powerhouse and the blowing engine house, which is also, we have a full-time maintenance crew, which they work with. The maintenance crew is based out of the blowing engine house as well.
Is that on the property behind the Carrie furnace?
That's all.
On the Carrie furnace.
Yeah, those
working in the buildings.
Okay,
Those two buildings are part of the historic structures.
thank you.
So I have a question as well as a comment. I've been on the tour of the furnace and been to the boast building. It's very impressive, and the artifacts and everything you have on display. And you sell a lot of these items for people as commemoratives. But I'm curious why, after these years you've been going with this whole presentation, there hasn't been more of a major anchor attraction. And by that I mean something similar to what's in Bethlehem, the old Bethlehem Steel Stacks Pavilion, which not only has arts and crafts and history, but they have a venue where they have concerts and people come constantly. And that type of anchor attraction is what pulls people in and keeps them coming back for more. Every venue that's historic needs that to be successful. And you have ample space and support, both governmentally as well as private investors. Have you considered that approach at all?
That actually is what the campaign is for. So, and unlike Bethany, Bethlehem, if I'm not mistaken, you can't actually go into the buildings there.
No, you can't. And the anchor there is a casino. We're not going to have a casino.
No, that's incorrect. The casino is there, but they do concerts and
Yeah, but
frankly,
the casino owns all of that property.
but they also tie everything to the historic district of
Right.
Bethlehem and the Bethlehem Hotel. A lot of people come for that entire experience.
And that is what we're looking to create, to build that out. We do have some concerts in Quantum, but once we get the buildings done, and I didn't know this till I joined, but mills were never on the grid because they created their own energy. So right now, our activities on site are during the warmer months. Once we finish building it out, to your point, we'll have a 12-month program of activities and things to do. But yes, that's exactly what our objective is.
Comment. First of all, thank you. Congratulations on everything you do. It's incredible. It's such a valuable asset to Western Pennsylvania district. I have a historical question. You mentioned that 6 boroughs were affected by the closing of the homestead mills. And all throughout the Mon Valley, East Pittsburgh, it's all tiny municipalities. Why? Why weren't there just 1 or 2? My theory has always been that Andrew Carnegie and his friends made sure that they were all divided so they could easily be conquered. That's just my guess.
Your theory is dead on. That's exactly what it is. If you keep these boroughs small and kind of fighting against each other, they're not going to fight against you. And then you can have more control over them.
And you can keep them from replacing the water lines.
Yeah, that's one of the
Raising your taxes.
that's one of the lessons of Homestead that they took away from it. Is don't allow the town to have too much power, and it was a very, for the most part, very paternalistic relationship where the towns relied upon the steel mills. So.
To that point, I had a great conversation with Amanda Gillen, who is my counterpart at the Frick. And we're talking about how we can work more closely together so that we're not representing only the grit and they're representing the beautiful side of things. Because there was a crossover. I don't know if you've been on a tour of the Frick recently, but growing up in our old neighborhood right next to the Frick, I've gone to a lot of tours. They used to show you Henry Clay Frick's bedroom and say, this is where he convalesced, and that was the end of the story. And I thought, oh, it must have been the flu. They just started to tell you, oh, this is where he recovered from being shot, and they actually have a bowl next to his bed now with a towel with a bit of blood on it. So I think there's a beautiful, we're getting closer to telling these stories about what was going down down the river and what was going on up on the hill, and how are those two intertwined, and how do people benefit and suffer from those decisions?
I was just going to say, it's probably a separate subject, so it's hard to tell how the U.S. deal with still has units. Probably one of the better, more powerful meetings. And it paid for my father to get a master's degree from Pitt. And he ended up teaching at Paine. right, I guess started in 1960 or 59, I'm not sure. It really affected the economy of the South Side in negative ways.
So you're referring to the long strike in 1959.
Yeah.
That was actually, and I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole. Researchers, that's what we do. But that's really a turning point. You know, the union had gained all this traction, and then they won so much in '59 that there was a big push from the corporations after that to start pushing back. And it was within a few years you start seeing the first layoffs. There's a Black Friday in 1963, et cetera. So the long strike had, in the end, kind of a detrimental effect on the unions. So they won a lot of concessions at that point. It created kind of a forum for the corporations to start changing things and changing their approach. That ultimately leads to what happens, 20 years later. It doesn't all happen overnight, as a lot of people, living here, as you can see that way. In 1980, suddenly it all fell apart, but really you can pinpoint a lot of it back to 1959.
Everything's a much longer discussion if you talk too long.
I just wanted to thank Rivers of Steel for working with me to promote the art exhibit of Henry Kerner's work. I think those of us from Squirrel Hill are pretty familiar with Henry and his presence in this community. For those of you who don't know who he was, he escaped Vienna as the Nazis arrived, ended up living in Pittsburgh, loved Pittsburgh because it reminded him so much of Vienna. And one of the features of the city that he loved so much, reminded him of Austria, was the gritty side of the city, the steel mills, the water towers, the bridges, railroads. And that's the focus of this exhibit. And I really encourage you to come. There will be art there from the Westmoreland Museum. They've lent some pictures. Henry Kerner's son has lent quite a number of works, has pulled them out of Kerner's archives, especially for this exhibit. And there is a special connection with Squirrel Hill, and we thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that the first time we went to Carrie Furnace, I took my sons because my grandfather worked at the very bottom of the furnace. But the stag head was done by the daughter of our president. And my question was, she was one of the people who snuck in, with the graffiti everywhere. So my question is, how is this art that was done back then fitting in with what you're doing now?
Well, let me give a high-level view of it. If you don't know, it's the deer head. And so when the mill closed down, people were breaking in all the time. It's hilarious to have people come on tours and then they confess to you that they were one of them. But it wasn't all destructive. There was graffiti art that we maintained. But the deer head, tell me your relative's name. The woman that worked on it, that you wrote. Liz.
Yeah.
Okay.
Liz Hammond.
Thank you. And then Tim Collett is another local artist. But they scrapped all the material on the site and every Sunday broke in and built this incredible structure. They had the good sense to put it in a place that was not in our way, so we've been able to work around it. But you would be surprised how many people want to get married in front of the deer house. But what it did was inspire art to be part of the foundation of what we do there. We actually have something called the Iron Garden, and these guys can tell you a little bit more about it.
The deer head is a remarkable thing. I mean, it starts as it purely as a guerrilla art piece that is now arguably the most popular piece of public art in this region. We've had people come from all over the world, they just want to see that. But what it really did for us as an organization has allowed us to look at the site in a different light. Up to that point, we were thinking very strict historic preservation. That showed us what art can do and bring new interest to the site and create something beautiful from what were considered ruins. And really gave way to our arts program as it exists now. We have a very robust metal arts program that we do where we cast iron on site and cast aluminum and do blacksmithing. We have graffiti art, programs that people can do, but also tours that you can take that talk about that interaction between, this post-industrial age and people in the region who found new ways to come to the site and fall in love with the site and tell their story in connection to it. So we have, graffiti programs that we do. We have the Iron Garden, which is an area that, well, quite honestly, early on when we were starting to do preservation work on the site, it was so overgrown and unmanageable that we couldn't do much with it. But what we discovered is that it gave us a prime laboratory for showing what nature does when you allow it to come back and how it reclaims the site and revitalizes the site and what that succession looks like. So we kept it. And it's actually where furnaces number 1 and 2 were. We kept that area as a kind of a wild area, cutting pathways, and it's now a sculpture garden. We have plaques that talk about the flora and fauna of the site that we cast in iron made on the site. And we've had weddings there. Paine was there. It's a pretty remarkable section of the site that actually the National Park Service came to us and wanted to learn about how did we do this, in looking at landscape management and doing something that is very grassroots, but is really impactful. What they said to us is you have, parks all over this country where they are spending millions of dollars to landscape and reintroduce trees and plants back in. And what you guys did is just allow that to happen naturally. And so it was a happy little mistake that worked out very well. But it's a great educational tool.
And we'll do more of that. Oh, sorry. Then I know we're closing, but I want to say one more remark.
Oh, just that it helps us correct a common misconception that places like Carrie were abandoned. Carrie has never been abandoned. Just from the moment it shut down, people were coming to the site and exploring it in a completely different way. And by incorporating all of the art into the stories that we tell about Carrie, it helps us tell the whole story about Carrie. Before it was a site, while it was an active industrial site, what happens after the industry goes away? People don't go away.
One final thought. We're also getting some really fascinating visitors. We're always surprised who shows up, but I had a really inspiring visit a couple months ago. I know somebody here is from Michigan. It was Senator Alyssa Slotkin from Michigan. And she, I got a call that she wanted to come and look at the site, and I expected her to show up with a whole, crew of people. It was just her chief of staff from Toledo, and a communications person, and we walked her around the site, and she was so fascinated and was asking a ton of questions. And then she said to me, I really wanted to come and see this because Detroit would not be Detroit without Pittsburgh. And I love that she was so inspired and able to talk about our impact on her state, and not just hunkering down as not seeing the impact we had. So that was a beautiful story, and I think that that's the future of what we're building at Carrie, is to continue to show the world, America and the world, how powerful Pittsburgh has been. So thank you for having us.
Is there a possibility of bringing back boat tours that you ran in the years back?
Not in the short term. We're actually, we're in the process of selling the boat. It was docked down at the Kearney Science Center. We purchased it from RiverQuest many years ago. It was a very cool green hybrid system built by Siemens that failed to work after 20 years, and we were not able to sail the boat. So it's for sale if anybody wants it. It's cool, but you're gonna have to repower the thing. You mentioned the flyers to take. There on the front are some of the cool things going on our sites in the next few months. And on the back is an opportunity to support us if you want to make a contribution. But please continue to come and visit the sites and be part of our future.
Well, thank you all for coming, and thank you for this enlightening presentation and appreciation for being with us tonight. We have for each of you a calendar, Squirrel Hill Then and Now. It's a joint project with the Historical Society and the Squirrel Hill Urban Coalition. We hope that you enjoy it the remainder of the year, and we hope